Mother Earth readies for transformation, as does every human soul, alive or dead. Long sought grail births, so activation, as above, so below, at least we shall wed. Secrets shall be no more, and truth shall be said. We feel the shifts around us go, for energy of change will flow. Our transitional beginning in Aquarius is here, where the old ways of Pisces breaks down, and so the elites fall and crown. The dawn of the light is finally here, where some will groan in fear, for dimensional evolution is certainly near. So hush, my dear soul, look to your heart, because soon the darkness will depart. We will see we are one with everything, where humanity will continue improving. Truth will come to light, and transformation will be in sight. Welcome to the Age of Aquarius. Hello, my name is Jessica Johnson and I'm tuning in from Western Michigan. Welcome to Vibe Talks. Today we're going to talk about the ages and how Earth had moved through the different points of the zodiac. And I'm going to explain how all this happened and how our collective consciousness had shifted through each of these ages and within the zodiac. To understand how this happened, we not only have to look forward to our current age of Aquarius, but we also must understand what each of these ages of the past had shifted humanity, and not only in consciousness, but how we lived, how our society developed throughout time, and how we evolved as a species. Some of you may just want to know what is yet to come rather than what has led us there. But part of enlightenment is to understand the whole story rather than just part of it in what you want to know. So hold on to your hats, because you are about to get transported through time of evolution. Allow me to ask you a question before I begin. Has anyone ever used the term the Age of Aquarius, or even the Age of Pisces? Well, to really understand the ages of the Earth, we have to understand the science behind it. A particular age the Earth will move through will be roughly about 2,100 years, and it will take roughly about 25,868 years for the Earth to visit all 12 signs of the zodiac. But if you would divide 25,868 years by the 12 signs, that, my friends, is how you would get 2,100 years that would make a particular age the Earth would move through. You see, every astrological sign has a different face on it, kind of like a different theme. Almost as if society, the cultures, the collective of consciousness, and the evolution of the human race have went through major shifts at each of these points. It's detected by the wobble effect of the Earth each time we enter a new age, every 2,100 years roughly. Life on Earth is nowhere near similar from one another each time we go through a new age. For example, if we were entering the age of Cancer, there would be a great social emphasis on family, housing, food, and fertility. In fact, when man experienced this period, it was from 8,000 to 6,000 BC, where dwellings were being developed, and humanity had winded up putting a great emphasis on family unit. Many examples of art as well as artifacts had survived in this era, where time had a dominated theme that depicted female fertility goddesses. And this was the era where humanity had winded up learning to fish, as well as made the earliest consort attempts of farming. This and all other ages had showed us where we begin in our culture of evolution, and where we are going to experience in the Age of Aquarius that began on December 21st of 2012. We have a lot to look forward to. We really do when it comes to the Age of Aquarius. But just as it has been done before throughout all the other ages, we are at a transitional point where the old must break away before the promised golden age can take hold. But first, let's view the previous ages to get a glimpse in how we have transitioned throughout the ages. We have came a long way to get to this point, to reach the point of ascension of our soul development. So let's start with the beginning of the Ice Age, which would fall within the age of Leo, which started about 11,000 BC and between 8,000 BC. With Leo, it was the time where the snow of the Ice Age had winded up melting and the global climate began to warm up. So what did we find? How was the culture on this planet at this time? Well, the cultures on Earth during this time were worshiping the sun. This was known as the Mesolithic period, or rather what we understand it as the Stone Age. This is where populations had risen in many parts of the world, and minimal farming began to birth as climates got warmer and the herds of large animals became more scarce. So let's jump forward another 2,000 years to the age of Cancer, where in this age it happened in between 8,000 BC and 6,500 BC. At this time of Cancer, just as I gave you the example earlier, it became more of a shift from the fire sign of Leo to the water sign of Cancer. So what happened? Well, I can tell you what happened. Floods happened. At around 8,000 BC is thought to be the time where the great floods that are mentioned in almost every major culture. The floods had drowned out the sun worship, which was replaced by the moon worship. And during this time, animals began to be domesticated. This was also a matriarchal period where many artifacts had depicted feminine figures. This was also a Neolithic age, or rather the late Stone Age, and during this time, burial rites were also developed. Current evidence points to the idea that during this time, a group soul level of consciousness was dominant, with very little individual ego consciousness. Tribal became the dominant mode of consciousness, and toward the end of this age came the domestication of horses and wild cattle. The invention of the wheel and even the weaving and some of the first known examples of metalworking, these were the technologies that from the basic survival needs of food, water, shelter, and reproduction. So let's go forward another 2,000 years to the age of Gemini, which happened between 6500 BC and 3750 BC. So during this age, human beings began to develop their intellect, and most of this age, however, still remains prehistoric. But by the end of this age, writing appeared first in crude pictographs, and finally in a formalized cuneiform of tablets in Samaria, as well as the hieroglyphs in Egypt. If writing developed toward the later half of this age, then we can safely assume that language had winded up developed by leaps and bounds throughout the age itself, all of which have fallen under the providence of Mercury-ruled sign, which is the planet that rules over communication. The world during this age had seemed to have flourished with all things in communication, language development, intellectual development, but also, perhaps most importantly, the duality of opposites. The sense of duality had begun to permeate in the collective consciousness of the planet. New images of dual God forms spontaneously emerged. In addition, as languages had developed, so did oral traditions, and it is believed that through the first books of the Old Testament were not written down until around 1000 BC at this time. So let's go forward to another 2000 years to the age of Taurus, which happened between 4000 BC to 1800 BC. It would seem that around this time period, what we would call as civilization began, and you have to also see that the word civilization actually comes from the Latin word of civilis, which means city. The Stone Age has now officially ended at this time, and most nomadic tribal people had opted for a stability of farm life. Now remember, Taurus is a fixed earth sign after all. Instead of having to roam around searching for food, developments allowed for harvesting of food that could be stored for the needs of an entire year. The earthland became a symbol of fertility, and the archetypical feminine took on a more positive context within the collective consciousness of humanity. Cities began to build in areas central to the wealth of the land and its capacity to provide abundance. The astrological sign of Taurus is also associated with agriculture, money, banking, real estate, and property. It deals with all matters dealing with the ownership that provide permanence and security. Cities have brought with them commerce, the division of labor, and their inhabitants began to live in stone and brick houses. The possessing of my land, my house, and my money became primary importance. We could say that the age of Taurus had begun the age of attachment, where farmers had joined other farmers and cities had joined other cities, and from this became the organization of city-states, and this in turn had led to the first sins of nationalism. In this time, the word that people had worshipped a number of bull deities all over the world. I mean, even the biblical scholars also generally agree that the earliest god of the Hebrews was also a bull god. For example, the bull shrines that existed in Bethel. So let's jump forward another 2000 years to the age of Aries, where this time had happened in between 1800 BC and 360 AD. You see, the age of Aries was an age of incredible change, unlike the previous ages before it. Aries had to do with the development of identity, like the ego, the I am that each of us carries within. And around 1800 BC, this was the rendering of humanity with the impulse to find a tribal ego. Humans had to first consolidate their gods, and out of impulse, monotheism was born. We see a single dominant god emerge in most cultures, shifting from the matriarchal to patriarchal orientation in regard to issues of power and daily life. You see, tribal egos were born, making war a major theme in this age, and it was the age of the warrior within the individual. Also, during this age, the Greeks had also gave us the likes of Homer, Hesiod, and other solar myths of individuals, filled with mortal heroes like Achilles, Hercules, Jason, and so on. Let's not forget Alexander the Great. The age of Aries progressed, and the ego had winded up developing, beginning to move from tribal to individual, where people became more contingent of their own power and capacity. This age had also empowered the individual, such as we no longer solely rely on the accomplishments of kings and leaders. Now we had writers, lawyers, scientists, senators, and so on. So let's go another 2000 years to the age of Pisces. Now, the age of Pisces was the age that we had came from before we winded up approaching the age of Aquarius come December 21st of 2012. You see, the age of Pisces had started at 360 AD to 2400 AD. After the 2,500 years of developing the identity of monotheism and the masculine heroic ego, a new impulse entered the collective psyche and began to consolidate in the individual. Buddha came on this planet and began to lay the groundwork in the East. Then, 500 years later, Jesus did the same to the West. The age of Pisces teachings instructed that the ego development wasn't enough, and that the ego must be yoked to something greater through sacrifice and non-attachments. The mortal hero must now give up that which he had fought so hard to obtain. Polarity is at the very heart of the symbol of Pisces, which is the two fishes swimming in opposite directions, yet fused together in union, such that they cannot release from each other. The age of Pisces had gave us more of a dense experience of duality than previously in the past ages. It seems that in the last 2,000 years was an extensive, intensive in the human lessons of duality. Those who won the wars wrote the history, and we have all internalized the one-sided story, not realizing that there is another side, like her story. There were pockets of time and places where the age of Pisces did find expression in love and compassion, as well as oneness. However, the energy on this planet experienced and was expressed by humanity and had been the deep shadow of the Pisces. Everyone at one time or another had came under the hammer of the orthodox political rigid agendas. Groups and races of people and different belief systems became a victim to dominant agendas in this time, and anyone who had stepped outside of the sanctioned control had been tortured, burned, sold, imprisoned, and so on. Pisces was intensely concerned with matters of faith, where religions were dominantly worshipped, and it was a time where people were led by leaders, and lies and deceit were done among societies. This was a time where secret societies were developed, and only small groups of selected, privileged people were allowed to know its secrets. So what about the age of Aquarius? With the darkness of the age of Pisces, will Aquarius be the light? Well, I'm glad that you were wondering that. As the Piscean age had ended, where the political and religious hierarchy no longer remained in control, much work still has to be done. And as we are still in the transitional phase, the old must break away for the new age to take hold, where monetary systems, political, religion, and control will fall in the hands of truth. What was done in the dark in the previous age will come to the light, which will lead to a breakdown of the old systems as well as the ways of life. We already see what is coming in the age due to it being dominated by networks and information. And some attempts have and will be made to control information and individuals within the old systems, trying to keep the old system in control. But this will not prevail. The key phrase for this age is, I know. This is the age of information. Even more major arrests of billionaires and political elites due to things coming to light. Nothing is or will be secret anymore because information is available at your fingertips. People are empowering themselves to research and to report underhanded structures of the old. You see, the Aquarian age is organized. Is an organization and is organized in a horizontal network, opening the world up to true equality. The age is on accepting yourself as a whole person who does not need to believe in something outside of themselves. You are ready, you will be ready to accept that you will have the knowledge and wisdom within yourself. It's no longer necessary to attach to something outside of yourself, but to become a leader of one within yourself. This coming new era should usher in a period of group consciousness, and we will see as the age progresses in a new and developed consciousness that everything will be given freely on demand to meet a need, where individuals will not conceive of lack. And what we give out of love grows, not diminishes. We will become spiritual beings having a human experience, and instead of human beings having a worldly experience, spirit and matter will merge and function as one. And instead of being humans with the third dimensional duality of consciousness, we will wind up becoming fourth and fifth dimensional consciousness beings of spiritual consciousness. It will be the feminine, the receiver of the divine inspiration, and the masculine acting it out to the world, united, and it will be united as one, unquestioning, without altering messages from the divine. It would be the end of selfish desires and the beginning of selfless, free expression of the soul of humanity. However, as stated earlier, before this age takes hold, there is a lot of work that will usher in the change, and many are in fear of that change and will push back, and it will be expected. Those that had been in control for generations are not going to give up. They're not going to give up easy at all. So the old will have to crumble before the new moves in the full force. The old monetary systems will fall, and politics and religion will lose its control, and secrets will be revealed. But know that the long-awaited age is here, where unity will prevail within this new age. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you to the age of Aquarius. Thank you so much for watching my video, and for more great videos, make sure that you hit the subscribe button down below. For now, see you next time on Vibe Talks. Stay blessed and let love do the rest.